They say no good deed goes unpunished. Mercy Adamu was about to learn just how true that was. The night she saved a prince's life would become the night that destroyed hers. Mercy's hands were raw from scrubbing car tires all day at the mechanic shop in Yoba. The smell of engine oil clung to her clothes as she hurried through the darkening streets of Lagos Island, already late for her night shift cleaning offices. At 22, she'd learned that survival meant running from one job to the next, with barely time to breathe in between. The shortcut through the alley behind the commercial buildings usually saved her 10 minutes. Tonight, it would change everything. The black Mercedes was crumpled against the wall, its front end smoking. Mercy's heart hammered as she approached, her phone already in her trembling hand. That's when she saw him, a man in an expensive suit, slumped halfway out of the driver's seat, blood pooling beneath him. Sir, can you hear me? Mercy dropped to her knees beside him, her cleaning supplies forgotten. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. She'd seen enough death in Ajagunal to recognize it creeping closer. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Mercy, these herbs can stop bleeding when nothing else will. She fumbled in her bag for the small pouch she always carried, dried leaves her mother had taught her to use before she died. Her fingers worked quickly, pressing the crushed herbs against the deep gash on his abdomen, using her hijab to apply pressure. Please don't die, she whispered, dialing for an ambulance with her other hand. The man's eyes fluttered open briefly. Even in the dim light, Mercy recognized him. Prince Daniel Okonkwo. His face was everywhere in Lagos. Billboards, newspapers, society magazines. He tried to speak, his lips barely moving. Betrayed. Then his eyes closed again. Mercy's hands were soaked in blood by the time she heard the sirens. She stayed with him, maintaining pressure on the wound, praying like her mother had taught her. The ambulance screeched to a halt, and paramedics rushed toward them. You saved his life, one of them told her as they loaded Daniel onto a stretcher. That bleeding would have killed him in minutes. Mercy stood in the alley, shaking, as the ambulance disappeared into the Lagos night. She looked down at her blood-stained hands and clothes. Experience had taught her one thing. People like her didn't get rewarded for helping people like him. They got blamed. She grabbed her bag and ran, melting into the darkness before anyone could ask her name. Behind her, she could already hear the gathering crowd, phones raised, recording the crashed car. By morning, Prince Daniel's accident would be headline news. What Mercy didn't see was the figure watching from the rooftop above, someone who'd been waiting to ensure the prince never made it out of that alley alive. 3 days crawled by like 3 years. Mercy watched the news on the old television at Mama Sandra's shop, her stomach tight with worry. Prince Daniel remained in a coma at Lagos University Teaching Hospital. Every channel showed the same footage. The crashed Mercedes, the mysterious blood-stained hijab found at the scene, the desperate search for the Good Samaritan who'd saved the prince's life. You need to forget about that night, Mama Sandra warned, pressing a cup of zobo into Mercy's hands. The older woman had been her mother's friend, and now she was all the family Mercy had left. Rich people and poor people don't mix, child. Whatever happened that night, let it stay there. But Mercy couldn't forget. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's pale face, heard his whispered warning. Betrayed. What had he meant? At the hospital, Vanessa Igwe maintained her vigil by Daniel's bedside. The cameras loved her, the devoted fiancée, tears always ready, designer clothes perfectly rumpled to suggest sleepless nights. She held Daniel's hand and whispered words of love that evaporated the moment the last reporter left. How much longer? Vanessa asked the doctor, her voice cold now, stripped of its public sweetness. It's hard to say. The next 48 hours are critical. Alone with Daniel, Vanessa studied his unconscious face. Their engagement had been arranged by their families, a merger of the Igwe business empire and the Okonkwo wealth. She'd agreed because Daniel was handsome, wealthy, and most importantly, controllable. Or so she'd thought, until he'd started asking uncomfortable questions about her business dealings. You should have just accepted things as they were, she murmured, adjusting his foreline. This could all have been avoided. A nurse entered, and Vanessa's mask slid back into place. Has there been any news about the person who saved him? She asked, voice breaking convincingly. I must thank them. They gave me back my Daniel. Nothing yet. But whoever it was, they knew what they were doing. The doctors said those herbs stopped the bleeding long enough to save his life. After the nurse left, Vanessa stood at the window, looking out at Lagos sprawling below. Someone out there had saved Daniel when he should have died. Someone who'd seen too much, knew too much. That person was now a problem that needed solving. She made a call. I need you to find someone for me, she said quietly. A woman. She was at the scene of the accident. Use whatever resources necessary. And be discreet. Meanwhile, in a small room in Ajigunal, Mercy tried to wash Daniel's blood from her favorite hijab. The stain wouldn't come out, no matter how hard she scrubbed. She didn't know why she'd gone back for it. The paramedics must have pulled it off when they took over. But something had made her return to that alley the next morning, searching until she found it discarded in a corner. Her phone buzzed. A text from her supervisor at the cleaning company. Don't come tonight. Position filled. Mercy stared at the message. She'd been late that night because of Daniel. Now she'd lost one of her 2 jobs. Rent was due in a week. She looked at the blood-stained hijab in her hands. Maybe Mama Sandra was right. Helping Prince Daniel might have been the biggest mistake of her life. What she didn't know was that at that very moment, Vanessa's investigator was reviewing security footage from nearby buildings, frame by frame, searching for a face. And he was getting close. Daniel's eyes opened to blinding white light and the steady beep of hospital monitors. His head felt stuffed with cotton, his memories scattered like broken glass. He tried to sit up and gasped at the sharp pain in his abdomen. Daniel! Oh, thank God! Vanessa's face appeared above him, tears streaming down her cheeks. She gripped his hand so tightly it hurt. I thought I'd lost you. What? What happened? His voice came out as a croak. Your car. There was an accident. Vanessa stroked his face, her touch cold despite her warm words. But I found you, my love. I saved you. Daniel's brow furrowed. Fragments of memory swirled in his mind. Pain, darkness, gentle hands that smelled of something earthy and clean. A woman's voice, praying. But when he tried to grasp the memory, it slipped away like smoke. You found me. Yes. I was following you from the office because you'd forgotten your phone. I saw the crash and called for help. Vanessa's story flowed smoothly, rehearsed to perfection. The doctors said if I'd been even 5 minutes later. Daniel closed his eyes. Something about her story felt wrong, but his head hurt too much to think clearly. I remember. Someone else. A woman. Vanessa's grip tightened. You're confused, darling. It's the medication. There was only me. Over the next few hours, doctors came and went. Daniel's father, Chief Raymond Okonkwo, arrived with his sister Zara. While Chief Raymond discussed Daniel's condition with the doctors, Zara sat beside her brother's bed. How are you feeling? She asked quietly. Like I've been hit by a truck. Daniel managed a weak smile. Zara, do you know what happened? Really happened. His sister glanced at Vanessa, who was speaking with their father in the corner. The police said your brakes failed. But... She hesitated. Danny, the security footage from that night is corrupted. All of it. Every camera within 3 blocks of the accident. That's convenient. That's what I thought. Zara leaned closer. And the hospital staff keep mentioning a good Samaritan, who stopped your bleeding with some kind of herbal medicine. They said whoever it was saved your life before the ambulance arrived. Daniel's eyes widened. The memory rushed back, gentle hands pressing something against his wound, a woman's urgent voice. It wasn't Vanessa. Keep your voice down, Zara warned. I don't trust her, Danny. I never have. Something about this whole thing stinks. Before Daniel could respond, Vanessa returned, her smile bright and possessive. Visiting hours are over. Daniel needs his rest. She shooed Zora away and settled into the chair beside the bed. Don't worry about anything, my love. I'll take care of everything. As Daniel drifted back to sleep, Vanessa pulled out her phone. A message waited. Found her. Name: Mercy Adamu. 22 years old. Orphan. Works at a mechanic shop in Yoba. No family, no connections. Vulnerable. Vanessa smiled. Perfect. An orphan with no one to protect her, no one to question what came next. She began typing a response, her fingers flying over the screen. The plan was simple. The evidence was already being planted. By the time Daniel was strong enough to ask questions, Mercy Adamu would be in police custody, branded as the criminal who tried to kill him. Sometimes the best way to bury the truth was to bury the witness. Vanessa's private investigator, a man named Samuel who asked no questions as long as the money was good, had done thorough work. Within 48 hours of identifying Mercy, he tracked her movements, documented her routine, and found her one weakness: she was invisible. People like Mercy moved through Lagos like ghosts. No one really saw them, which made them easy to frame. The tow truck driver remembers her, Samuel reported, sitting across from Vanessa in an empty hospital conference room. Says she was standing by the car when he arrived. We can work with that. Make him remember more, Vanessa said, sliding an envelope across the table. Make him remember seeing her tampering with something. Looking suspicious. Samuel pocketed the money. Consider it done. The next piece was trickier. Vanessa needed physical evidence, something that would place Mercy at the scene with intent, not coincidence. She'd already retrieved the blood-stained hijab from the police evidence room through a well-placed bribe. Now she needed more. What about fingerprints? Samuel suggested. Vanessa smiled. Exactly what I was thinking. That night, under cover of darkness, Samuel returned to the impound lot where Daniel's Mercedes was stored. The door's interior handle, the glove compartment, the emergency brake, all surfaces Mercy might have touched while trying to help Daniel. Samuel carefully lifted the prints, preserving them. By morning, those same prints appeared on items they shouldn't have been on. The cut brake line, the car's hood release, a screwdriver found suspiciously near the crash site. The story Vanessa crafted was simple but devastating. Mercy Adamu, a poor orphan desperate for money, had sabotaged Prince Daniel's car hoping to create an accident she could then save him from, earning his gratitude and financial reward. When the accident proved more serious than planned, she'd fled the scene in panic. It's actually brilliant, Vanessa told Samuel. The truth is she did save him. But we flip it. Make that very fact proof of her guilt. Why else would she disappear? Why else would she have those herbs ready? She planned the whole thing. What about motive? Poverty is always a motive. Vanessa's voice was cold. And when you're that poor and that desperate, people believe you're capable of anything. 3 days later, Vanessa sat in Chief Raymond Okonkwo's study, her evidence laid out like a prosecutor's case. Daniel's father listened, his face growing darker with each revelation. An orphan girl did this to my son? His voice shook with rage. To extort money from us? I'm so sorry, Chief Okonkwo. Vanessa had perfected her distressed tone. I wish it weren't true. But the evidence is clear. Her fingerprints are all over the brake line. The tow truck driver saw her at the scene before the ambulance arrived. She used those herbs to make it look like she saved him, but she's the one who caused the accident in the first place. Chief Raymond slammed his fist on the desk. I want her arrested. Today. I want her prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I thought you might say that. Vanessa handed him a card. I've already spoken to the Commissioner of Police. He's waiting for your call. As Vanessa left the Okonkwo estate that evening, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. By tomorrow morning, Mercy Adamu would be in custody. By the end of the week, she'd be headline news, the greedy poor girl who tried to kill a prince for money. The truth didn't matter. It never did, not when you had power, money, and a good story. And Vanessa had all three. She made one final call. Is everything in place? Yes, ma'am. The media's been briefed. They'll run the story as soon as the arrest happens. Good. Vanessa smiled. Make sure they get a photo of her. I want everyone in Lagos to see the face of the woman who tried to murder Prince Daniel Okonkwo. In Ajigunle, Mercy slept uneasily in her small room, unaware that tomorrow morning, her life would end as she knew it. The knock on the door would come at dawn, and nothing would ever be the same again. The pounding on the door came at 5:47 a.m. Mercy jerked awake, her heart racing. For a moment, she thought she'd overslept for her shift at the mechanic shop. Then the pounding came again, harder, accompanied by a voice that froze her blood. Police. Open up. Mercy stumbled to the door in her nightclothes, hands shaking. The moment she cracked it open, 3 officers pushed inside, filling her tiny room with their bulk and authority. Mercy Adamu. The lead officer barely waited for her nod. You're under arrest for the attempted murder of Prince Daniel Okonkwo and conspiracy to commit fraud. What? No, there must be. The words died in her throat as cold metal handcuffs clicked around her wrists. You have the right to remain silent. The officer's voice faded to background noise as Mercy's mind spun. Attempted murder? Prince Daniel. She'd saved him, not tried to kill him. This had to be a mistake, some horrible misunderstanding. Please, I didn't do anything wrong. I helped him. I called the ambulance. Save it for the judge. The officer's voice was hard. We have all the evidence we need. They led her out into the early morning light of Ajigunle. Neighbors had already gathered, drawn by the commotion. Mercy saw Mama Sandra's horrified face in the crowd, saw the shock and judgment on others' faces. Someone was recording on their phone. By noon, the video would be everywhere. At the police station, everything became a blur. Fingerprints, photos, processing. They took her phone, her small bag of belongings, even her mother's herbal pouch. Each item was catalogued and sealed in plastic, transformed from treasured possessions to criminal evidence. I want to call someone, Mercy said, her voice small. The officer snorted. Call who? Your accomplices. I don't have accomplices. I didn't do anything. But no one was listening. By the time they locked her in a holding cell, the story had already hit the news. Mercy watched through the bars as officers gathered around a television in the squad room. Identified as Mercy Adamu, a 22-year-old orphan with no known family ties. Sources say she sabotaged Prince Daniel's vehicle in an elaborate extortion scheme, intending to save him and demand payment. When the accident proved nearly fatal, she fled the scene. Police have confirmed her fingerprints were found on the damaged brake line. The news anchor's face was replaced by Mercy's arrest photo, looking guilty and terrified. Then came footage of the Okonkwo estate, of Chief Raymond Okonkwo making a statement. Justice must be served. This young woman nearly killed my son out of greed. She will face the full consequences of her actions. Mercy's legs gave out. She sank onto the concrete bench in her cell, unable to process what was happening. How could they think she'd tried to kill Daniel? How could helping someone become proof of guilt? The cell door clanged open hours later. A police officer thrust a newspaper through the bars. Thought you might want to see what they're saying about you. The headline screamed across the front page. Poor girl's evil plot against Prince. Below it, a photo of Mercy at the mechanic shop, looking tired and dirty. The article painted her as a calculating criminal, a gold digger who'd seen an opportunity and taken it. 3 days passed in that cell. No lawyer came. No visitors were allowed. Mama Sandra tried twice and was turned away both times. Mercy existed in a fog of disbelief and growing despair. On the 4th day, they transferred her to Kirikiri prison to await trial. The other inmates eyed her with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. You're that girl from the news, one woman said. The one who tried to kill the prince. I didn't. Save it. We've all got stories. At Lagos University Teaching Hospital, Daniel sat up in bed, strong enough now to read the newspapers his father had been hiding from him. When he saw Mercy's photo, something stirred in his memory. That face. He'd seen it before, not in the crash, but in his dreams, gentle eyes, worried but kind. Father, who is this woman? Chief Raymond's face hardened. The criminal who tried to kill you. Don't think about her, son. Think about getting better. She'll pay for what she did. But as Daniel stared at Mercy's photograph, he felt certainty settle in his chest like a stone. This woman, with her scared eyes and blood-stained clothes, hadn't tried to kill him. If anything, the memory crystallizing in his mind suggested the opposite. She'd saved his life. And now someone was destroying hers for it. The courtroom was packed. Mercy sat in the defendant's box, wearing the same clothes she'd been arrested in. They'd been washed but still carried stains she couldn't identify. Her court-appointed lawyer, Mr. Johnson, was a tired-looking man who'd spoken to her for exactly 15 minutes before the trial began. Just plead guilty and throw yourself on the court's mercy, he'd advised. The evidence against you is overwhelming. But I'm innocent. Mr. Johnson had sighed like he'd heard that line 1,000 times. Then we'll do our best. But I'm telling you, Miss Adamu, this doesn't look good. The prosecution was led by Mrs. Adebayo, a sharp-eyed woman in an expensive suit. She stood before the judge with the confidence of someone who'd already won. Your Honor, the evidence will show that the defendant, Mercy Adamu, deliberately sabotaged Prince Daniel Okonkwo's vehicle with the intent to cause an accident. She planned to position herself as his savior, earning his gratitude and financial reward. When the accident proved more severe than anticipated, she fled the scene, leaving the prince to die. Mercy's hands trembled in her lap. This wasn't what happened. None of this was what happened. The prosecution presented their case with devastating efficiency. First came the tow truck driver, who testified he'd seen Mercy acting suspiciously around Daniel's car before the ambulance arrived. She was bending over the hood, he said, not meeting Mercy's eyes. Looked like she was tampering with something. I was checking if he was alive. Mercy burst out. Mr. Johnson grabbed her arm, silencing her. Next came the forensic expert, who explained how Mercy's fingerprints had been found on the brake line housing and various tools near the scene. And in your professional opinion, Mrs. Adebayo asked, how did the defendant's fingerprints come to be on these items? She would have had to handle them directly. There's no other explanation. The evidence kept mounting. Photos of the damaged brake line. Testimony about Mercy's financial situation. Her eviction notice, her debts, her desperate poverty. Everything twisted to paint her as a calculating criminal. When it was Mr. Johnson's turn, he fumbled through a weak defense. My client was simply a good Samaritan who happened upon an accident. The fingerprints could have been transferred. Transferred from where, Mr. Johnson? The judge looked skeptical. From the brake line she shouldn't have been near. Mercy's testimony was brief and unconvincing even to her own ears. I was walking home from work. I saw the crashed car. I tried to help because he was bleeding. I used my mother's herbs to stop the bleeding. That's all. I didn't do any of those other things they're saying. Then why did you flee the scene? Mrs. Adebayo pounced. I was scared. I'm nobody. He's a prince. I thought there would be trouble. Trouble because you tried to kill him? No. Because people like me don't get involved with people like him without paying for it somehow. The words hung in the air, more truth than Mercy had intended to speak. Mrs. Adebayo smiled, sensing weakness. So you admit you knew there would be consequences? That's not what I meant. No further questions. As the day wound down, the judge remanded Mercy in custody pending the next hearing. She was being led away when a commotion at the back of the courtroom made everyone turn. Prince Daniel Okonkwo stood in the doorway, leaning heavily on a cane. He looked pale and weak, but his eyes were clear and focused directly on Mercy. "Your Honor," Daniel said, his voice carrying through the silent courtroom, "I'd like to observe these proceedings. This is my case, after all." The judge nodded. "Of course, Your Highness. Please, take a seat." As Mercy was led past him, Daniel's eyes locked with hers. For a moment, everything else faded. In his gaze, Mercy saw something she hadn't seen in days. Doubt. Not doubt in her guilt, but doubt in the story he'd been told. Then the moment passed, and the guards pulled her away. But as the door closed behind her, Mercy felt the first flicker of something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. In the corridor, Daniel's sister Zara materialized beside him. "You shouldn't be here. You're supposed to be resting." "I needed to see her." Daniel's eyes remained fixed on the door where Mercy had disappeared. "Zara, something's wrong with this case." "I know. I've been looking into it." Zara glanced around, ensuring they weren't overheard. "Danny, the evidence is too perfect. Too convenient. Someone went to a lot of trouble to make sure this girl takes the fall. Then we need to find out who. And why." What Daniel didn't see was Vanessa, watching from her car outside the courthouse, her phone pressed to her ear. "He attended the trial," she said coldly. "We need to move faster. If he starts asking questions, we'll handle it," came the reply. "The girl's as good as convicted. No one cares about the truth when the story's this good." Vanessa smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "Make sure they don't. I've come too far to have some orphan girl ruin everything now." Daniel couldn't sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he was back in that alley. Darkness, pain, and a woman's voice cutting through both. "Please don't die. Please." Not Vanessa's cultured tones, but something rougher, more desperate, more real. He sat up in bed, his wound aching. It had been 2 weeks since the accident, 1 week since Mercy's trial began. The pieces weren't fitting together the way everyone insisted they should. The next morning, he returned to the courthouse against his doctor's orders and Vanessa's protests. When Mercy took the stand for cross-examination, Daniel leaned forward, studying her face. Mrs. Adebayo circled like a shark. "Miss Adamu, you claim you used herbal medicine to stop Prince Daniel's bleeding. Where exactly did you learn this?" "My mother taught me. Before she died." "How convenient. A dead mother who taught you just enough medical knowledge to make this scheme work." "It wasn't a scheme." Mercy's voice cracked. "I was trying to save him." The moment she spoke, something clicked in Daniel's mind. That voice. That exact tone. Urgent. Afraid. Determined. He'd heard it in the darkness, felt gentle hands pressing something against his wound while that voice prayed in Hausa. "Allah ya kie sure. Please, don't let him die." The memory crashed over him with such force he gasped. Zara, sitting beside him, gripped his arm. "What is it?" "Her," Daniel whispered. "It was her. She did save me." But before he could say more, the hearing adjourned. Daniel tried to approach the bench, but Vanessa intercepted him in the hallway, her smile fixed and brittle. "Darling, you look exhausted. Let me take you home. I need to speak to the judge. To the police. That woman didn't try to kill me." "You're confused." Vanessa's grip on his arm tightened. "The medication, the trauma. The doctors warned us you might have false memories." "These aren't false. Daniel, please. Trust me. I'm only trying to protect you." There was something in her voice, something off-key. Daniel pulled away. "I need to be alone." He spent the afternoon at the accident site, Zara hovering protectively nearby. The street had returned to normal, traffic flowing, vendors shouting, Lagos indifferent to what had happened here. Daniel knelt where his car had crashed, running his fingers over the pavement. "What are you looking for?" Zara asked. "I don't know. Evidence. Truth. Anything." The police already processed the scene. Then they missed something. Daniel's hand closed around something small caught in a crack. He pulled it out. Dried leaves, crushed and brown, but distinctive. Zara, look at this. His sister examined the herbs. These look like the same ones described in the hospital report. The ones that stopped your bleeding. Which means Mercy really did use them here. She wasn't lying about that part. We need more, Danny. This isn't enough to overturn a case. But Daniel was already pulling out his phone, photographing the herbs. An idea was forming, dangerous and necessary. If Vanessa was lying about what happened, then someone needed to find out why. Meanwhile, in Kirikiri prison, Mercy had found an unexpected ally. Grace, a woman serving time for theft, had been watching Mercy for days before finally speaking. You really didn't do it, did you? Mercy looked up from the thin mattress she called a bed. Does it matter? It matters to you. I can see it eating you alive. Grace sat down beside her. Tell me about these herbs everyone's talking about. For the first time since her arrest, Mercy talked about her mother, about learning to identify plants, about the old ways of healing that most people had forgotten. Grace listened, then pulled out a contraband notebook. Write it down, she said. All of it. Your mother's recipes, your knowledge. If you go down, at least something of value survives. Mercy took the notebook with shaking hands. As she began to write, muscle memory took over. Here was her mother's ntsakwa for wounds. Here was the combination that stopped bleeding. Page after page filled with knowledge passed down through generations, now documented in a prison cell. She didn't know that Zara had found the ambulance driver from that night, or that he was finally telling the truth. It wasn't the fancy lady who called. It was a skinny girl covered in blood, crying and begging us to hurry. She stayed with him the whole time, keeping pressure on the wound. She didn't know that Daniel had visited the hospital's herbal medicine consultant, showing him the dried leaves. These are rare, the consultant said, and old knowledge. Whoever used these knew exactly what they were doing. This combination would stop arterial bleeding in minutes. She didn't know that Zara was following digital breadcrumbs, payments made to the tow truck driver, unexplained gaps in security footage, a pattern of corrupted evidence that pointed to someone with money and motive. But Mercy did know one thing, sitting in her cell with her mother's remedies flowing from her pen, the truth mattered. Even if no one else believed her, she would hold on to that truth until her last breath. Outside her cell, a guard walked past with a newspaper. The headline read, Prince Daniel questions evidence in attempted murder case. For the first time since this nightmare began, the tide was starting to turn. But Vanessa, watching from her office in Victoria Island, was already planning her next move. If Daniel was starting to remember, then she'd have to make sure those memories stayed confused. Some truths, she'd learned, were too dangerous to survive. Zara burst into Daniel's hospital room 3 weeks after the accident, her eyes bright with the kind of excitement that meant trouble. I found something. Danny, you need to see this. She pulled up a video on her tablet, security footage from a small grocery store across from the accident site. The timestamp read the night of the crash, and the angle captured part of the alley. The police said all the footage was corrupted, Daniel said. They checked the traffic cameras and the bank's cameras. They didn't check the grocery store because it's so far back, the owner didn't think to mention it. Zara tapped play. The video was grainy but clear enough. Daniel watched his car swerve into the alley, clearly out of control. The driver's door opened, and he saw himself stumble out, falling. The timestamp ticked forward. 1 minute. 3. 5. Then a figure appeared, small, hurrying, carrying bags. The person stopped, dropped everything, and ran to the crashed car. Even in black and white, Daniel could see the panic in the person's movements as they knelt beside his collapsed form. That's Mercy, he whispered. Keep watching. The video continued. Mercy pressed something against his wound, made a phone call, never left his side. But there was something else. 3 minutes before Mercy appeared, another figure moved through the frame, walking away from the crash site, looking back once before disappearing. Someone else was there, Daniel said. Someone who left you to die. And if Mercy hadn't come along. Zara didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Daniel stood, ignoring the pull of his healing wound. We need to show this to the police. There's more. Zara pulled up another file. I had a mechanic friend look at your car. The brake lines weren't just damaged, Danny. They were deliberately cut. This was attempted murder. And whoever did it never expected you to survive. Mercy saved my life. Daniel's voice was hollow. And we arrested her for trying to take it. There's still the question of motive. Who wanted you dead? Daniel thought about the weeks before the accident. He'd been auditing the company's accounts, finding irregularities in certain partnerships. Vanessa's name had come up repeatedly. He'd planned to ask her about it the night of the crash. I think, he said slowly, I need to have a conversation with my fiancée. But Vanessa had sensed the shift in winds. When Daniel called her that evening, asking her to meet him, she agreed with her usual sweetness. Then she immediately made another call. He's asking questions. The sister's been investigating. We need to close this down now. What do you want me to do? Get the girl convicted. Fast. Once there's a verdict, everything else becomes conspiracy theory. And make sure the prince understands that his loyalty to his family includes loyalty to me. The next day in court, Mrs. Adebayo moved to close testimony. Your Honor, the prosecution rests. The evidence clearly demonstrates. Your Honor, I have new evidence. Zara stood in the back of the courtroom, holding up her tablet. Evidence that proves Mercy Adamu's innocence. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Order. Miss Okonkwo, you cannot simply. The security footage was incomplete, Zara said, moving forward. This video shows what really happened that night. Mrs. Adebayo objected violently, but the judge was curious enough to allow it. The courtroom watched in silence as the video played on the large screen. When it finished, a murmur ran through the crowd. Daniel stood. Your Honor, I'd like to make a statement. Your Highness, you're not on the witness list. I'm the victim. I have a right to speak. Daniel moved to the front of the court, leaning on his cane but standing straight. I've been recovering my memories. The woman who saved me that night smelled of soap and herbs. She prayed in Hausa. She was terrified but stayed with me anyway. He looked directly at Mercy. That woman was Mercy Adamu. She saved my life. She didn't try to take it. The judge leaned forward. These are serious allegations, Your Highness. Are you suggesting evidence was fabricated? I'm saying someone tried to kill me that night. And when Miss Adamu inconveniently saved me, they decided to make her the scapegoat. Vanessa stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Daniel, you're clearly still confused from your injuries. I'm not confused, Vanessa. Daniel turned to face her. I remember now. All of it. Including the questions I was planning to ask you about the Igwe Okonkwo development deal. The one with the missing 18 million naira. Vanessa's face went white. Your Honor, Daniel continued, I'd like to formally request that the investigation into my accident be reopened. And I'd like to know why evidence placing someone else at the scene was never entered into this trial. Mrs. Adebayo was on her feet. Your Honor, these accusations are interesting, the judge interrupted. Very interesting. Miss Adamu's lawyer, I trust you'll be filing for a mistrial. Mr. Johnson, looking like he'd stumbled into someone else's case, nodded frantically. Yes, Your Honor. Immediately. As the courtroom dissolved into chaos, Vanessa grabbed her purse and headed for the door. But Daniel's voice stopped her cold. Going somewhere, darling? Vanessa turned, her mask finally cracking. You were supposed to die, Daniel. This was all so much simpler when you were supposed to die. The entire courtroom went silent. Did you just? The judge stared at her. Vanessa laughed. High and brittle. Do you know what it's like? Being engaged to someone you can barely tolerate? Waiting for him to discover what you've been doing? He was going to ruin everything. So yes, I arranged the accident. I cut the brake lines myself. And when that worthless orphan saved him, I made sure she'd pay for interfering. Security guards were already moving toward her, but Vanessa wasn't done. You think you've won? My uncle was in on it too. Chief Benson wanted control of the Okonkwo Empire, and I wanted freedom. With you dead, we'd both get what we wanted. Chief Benson. Chief Raymond stood from his seat, his face purple with rage. My own brother? As the guards seized Vanessa, she looked directly at Mercy. I'd do it again. People like you should know your place. You should have left him to die. Mercy, still in the defendant's box, watched the woman who tried to destroy her finally reveal her true nature. She felt no triumph, only exhaustion and the faint stirring of relief. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly. This court is adjourned. Miss Agui, you are to be taken into custody immediately. Miss Adamu, you are released on your own recognizance pending a full investigation. This case is dismissed. As the guards led Vanessa away, she was still screaming about injustice and betrayal. Daniel made his way to Mercy, who stood frozen, unable to quite believe it was over. Miss Adamu, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Mercy looked at him, this prince she'd saved and who'd unknowingly condemned her. You couldn't have known. I should have trusted my memories. I should have asked more questions. You were hurt and confused. They used that. Mercy's voice was steady now. Thank you for finding the truth. For not giving up. Zara appeared beside them. The real trial's just beginning. We have to prove the conspiracy, track down Chief Benson. But not today, Daniel said. He looked at Mercy. Today, Miss Adamu goes home. Home. Mercy hadn't heard that word in weeks. As she walked out of the courthouse, past the cameras and shouting reporters, into the Lagos sun, she realized she barely remembered what home felt like. But she was about to find out. The full story broke over the next week like a storm. Chief Benson was arrested trying to board a flight to Dubai. Security footage from his office showed him meeting with Vanessa multiple times in the weeks before Daniel's accident. Financial records revealed the embezzlement scheme they'd planned. With Daniel dead and Vanessa married to Chief Benson, they'd have controlled both family fortunes. It was about power, Zara explained to Mercy during one of her visits to help Mercy resettle into life outside prison. Danny was asking too many questions about the business. He was going to expose the fraud. They needed him gone. Mercy, sitting in Mama Sandra's shop with actual choices about how to spend her day, still couldn't quite process it all. And they were willing to let me take the blame. You were perfect for it. No family, no connections, no voice. Zara's expression was fierce. I'm sorry. We should have looked harder from the beginning. The formal exoneration came 3 weeks later, in the same courtroom where Mercy had been tried. This time, the judge's words were apologetic. Miss Adamu, this court finds that you were wrongly accused and imprisoned. The evidence against you was fabricated, and you are hereby fully exonerated of all charges. The state apologizes for this miscarriage of justice. The media, which had vilified her so thoroughly, now scrambled to make her a hero. Orphan girl saves prince, fights false charges. The same newspapers that had called her a gold digger now praised her bravery and resilience. Mercy found it all hollow. What mattered was walking out of that courthouse a free woman, with no charges hanging over her head, no cell waiting for her at night. That was enough. Daniel was waiting outside, still using his cane but stronger now. His father stood beside him, looking uncomfortable but determined. Miss Adamu, Chief Raymond said formally. On behalf of my family, I apologize for the suffering we caused you. My brother's actions, Miss Agui's crimes. We should have seen the truth sooner. It's over now, Mercy said simply. The family would like to offer compensation. Education, housing, employment, whatever you need to rebuild your life. Mercy had thought about this offer, knowing it would come. Part of her wanted to refuse, to say she didn't need anything from the people who'd let her be imprisoned. But pride wouldn't feed her or give her the future her mother had wanted for her. "I'd like to finish my education," she said. "I was 2 years into a nursing program when my mother died. I had to drop out to work." "Consider it done," Chief Raymond said. "And if there's anything else, that's enough. Thank you." Daniel stepped forward as his father retreated. "Can I talk to you? Privately?" They walked to a quieter corner of the courthouse grounds. Daniel leaned against a wall, studying her face like he was still trying to reconcile the woman before him with the memory of that night. "I know we've said sorry," he began. "But words don't feel like enough. They're what you have. I keep thinking about that night. You had every reason to walk past my car. No one would have blamed you. But you stayed. I'm a nurse. Or I was trying to be one." Mercy shrugged. "I couldn't leave someone to die. Most people would have. Then most people have forgotten what it means to be human." Daniel smiled faintly. "My sister says you're the strongest person she's ever met. I'm starting to think she's right. I'm not strong. I'm just still here." Mercy looked out at the Lagos traffic, the endless flow of people with their own struggles and dreams. "Your uncle and your fiancée tried to break me. They tried to make me invisible. But I survived. Maybe that's its own kind of strength. What will you do now? Go back to school. Learn to be a nurse. Help people." Mercy paused. "And maybe try to forget the last 2 months ever happened. If you ever need anything, I know where to find you." Mercy smiled, genuine for the first time since the accident. "Thank you, Prince Daniel, for believing me in the end." "Just Daniel. And I should be thanking you. You gave me my life back twice, once that night and once in that courtroom." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two people whose paths had crossed in the worst possible way and somehow found their way to justice. "I should go," Mercy finally said. "Mama Sandra is waiting. She wants to cook for me. Something about putting meat back on my bones." Daniel laughed. "Then I won't keep you." "But Mercy." He caught her hand briefly. "I'm glad you're the one who found me that night. I'm glad you're the kind of person who stops to help. The world needs more people like you." Mercy squeezed his hand once, then let go. She walked away without looking back, through the courthouse gates, into the Lagos evening. She had classes to register for, a life to rebuild, and a future that was finally her own again. Behind her, Daniel watched her go. Zora appeared at his elbow. "You're not going to try to see her again? She deserves peace. She deserves a life that isn't tangled up with mine." "That's probably wise." Zora linked her arm through her brother's. "Come on. We have a company to save and an uncle to testify against." 3 months later, Mercy Adamu walked into Lagos State University's nursing program with a full scholarship funded by the Okonkwo Foundation. She wore new clothes, carried new books, and had a new apartment in a safe neighborhood. But she also carried her mother's herbal remedies in her bag, the knowledge written in that prison notebook now transcribed and preserved. Some of the other students recognized her from the news. Some whispered. But most simply saw another student trying to make something of herself, which was exactly what Mercy wanted to be. She didn't see Daniel again for a long time. The newspapers reported that he'd taken over more control of the family business, that he'd broken his engagement to Vanessa before her trial began, that he was reforming company policies to root out corruption. Mercy didn't follow the stories. She had her own life to live. On the day she received her nursing certificate 2 years later, Mama Sandra brought flowers to the ceremony. As they walked out together, Mercy saw a car parked across the street, black and expensive, with tinted windows. The back window rolled down briefly, and she caught a glimpse of a face she recognized. Daniel raised his hand in a wave, a smile on his face. Then the window rolled up, and the car drove away. That was the prince, Mama Sandra said. I know. Aren't you going to? No. Mercy turned away, her certificate gripped in her hands. This is my moment. My achievement. I don't need a prince to validate it. But she smiled as she walked away, because she understood the gesture. He'd come to witness her triumph, just as she'd witnessed him in his moment of vulnerability. They'd saved each other in different ways, and now they were both free. That was enough. That was everything. Mercy Adamu walked into her future with her head high, carrying nothing but her knowledge, her strength, and the certain belief that kindness, even when punished, was always worth it. The truth had won in the end. And so had she. Mercy's story proves that even in our darkest moments, truth and courage can light the way. If this touched your heart, don't let it end here. Hit that subscribe button and join the Folktales by Inaya family. Because every story we share might be the one that changes someone's perspective, ignites their hope, or reminds them they're not alone. See you in the next story.